They say, see you.
Good afternoon. This is my opinion, and that's all that it's worth. I'm looking at, we have a few different options, and that would be to choose one of the candidates. We can definitely discuss the candidates. We could continue with interim and I believe negotiate with Darwin, and then we can start all over. I want to hear about it. That's what I'm saying. Do you have any feelings about that before we start? Mike, do you have anything?
I think those are the three options on the table in front of us.
I mean, if those are the options you want to lay out, those are the options we'll work with today.
But I mean, are there any other ones?
Well, I mean, if you're going to negotiate with Darwin, I'll just say point blank what he told me after a meeting one night. And that was the reason he dropped out was because we did not change the ordinance to make it a manager's position. So that's the way he feels and did not want to finish through the process. Then I guess that's his prerogative to drop out.
Was that cause for a discussion now about potentially changing the ordinance? So back then, I thought we had a very open, honest, straightforward conversation, discussion amongst council. We came to a unanimous conclusion. I saw the validity in the management. I also saw the validity in the current setup. It didn't seem like it was going to be a huge factor in this decision-making process of hiring a new administrator, but we want to revisit that. Because without revisiting that, I guess negotiating with Darwin is a non-starter. I guess what I'm trying to say.
I would agree with
So
that.
we want to take a few minutes and talk about that ordinance again before we get started.
Well, the comment that I will say regarding the ordinance, and I would agree that it was a unanimous decision. I know there was a lot of discussion about it. One of the reasons that I voted yes at that particular time is because when Frank was posed with the question, whether or not he felt the administrator would be a deal breaker or be a cause for concern for our applicants, that was the reason that I ended up voting yes. However, now that we're going through the process, I'm curious as to if that would have made a difference in hindsight with applicants that we had, applying. If that would have made a difference in hindsight, we don't obviously know that at this point, but that's why I ended up voting yes for it when I did.
And we also, when we voted on that ordinance, we said we would review it September, October, August, September, October, once we had a new
Yes, we did.
manager or administrator on board.
Yes, we did.
So I guess I don't see a reason to rehash the ordinance today.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I mean, because then we're just changing what we said before to fit what's going on here today.
If I understand James correctly, if we are not amiable, is that the right word I want to use, to changing the ordinance, then there would be no reason to discuss Darwin. So if we are saying that we would be, I don't know what the right word is, if we would be willing to look at the ordinance, then that would mean that Darwin, we're still in the mix.
Well, let me ask this
Does
question.
that make sense?
Yeah. Let me ask this question. How many people have talked to Darwin about this situation? Because he's had no conversations with me other than the reason why he was dropping out.
My understanding is that Darwin has encouraged us to continue with our process that we began with the service. And he has said to me to go ahead and go through the process. If there's not an applicant that we feel that will be the best for Blissfield, then he would be willing to have a discussion. I mean, that's
Okay.
that's what he said
That's
to
what
me.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
understand here,
That's
so.
how that was my impression of our discussion, yes.
And that's what I got from our discussion too.
Yeah, I would echo that.
I would as well, that's basically what he stated to me.
I remember thinking when we were having the discussion of manager and administrator, that if I knew it was Darwin, I would trust him to be the manager to hire people. But not knowing who we were gonna get, I wasn't real comfortable switching to a manager.
So, this is just a hypothetical. So if you do switch to a manager down the road and that person leaves, then what happens? Then you're hiring for a manager's position without knowing who that person is.
Right, I agree, I know. But again, you can always change it back if you're not happy. I don't like to keep changing,
Right.
but
Well, and that's the one thing that kind of bothered me with that whole situation was that it seemed like that whole ordinance issue came about because one person was trying to change it for that position.
I don't agree with your opinion. I can see where you're coming from, but I wouldn't follow that. I think with everything that the interim administrator has suggested, I think that it was in good faith of making good for Blissfield, as everything else that he has done
I
is
understand.
going in that direction for Blissfield. I don't think it was self-promoting. I don't believe that.
So then when we did pass the ordinance, he dropped out.
Not initially. In fact, it was after he had the ordinance that he still went ahead and applied for the position.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for him. I mean, Darwin, I'm assuming he's not listening, but if he were, I can't speak for him. My take is that when he applied for the position, it's a administrator, and I think he thought perhaps that that's what he could do. And I think that perhaps that when it got down to where he was one of the 3 or 4 people, that ideally he could potentially be one of the people, and therefore let's just pretend that he was offered the position, offered the position, and then he went ahead and said, well, I can't do it because of this. I look at it as being open and honest and trying something and then coming and I don't know, I think sometimes we all get there and say, yeah, I think I can do this, and you get there, wherever there is, and you say, you know what, I can't do this. It's just not my thing. And I think that he is an ethical kind of guy. And I think that that's where, I could be very wrong, but that's my take on it.
When I review the 3 candidates and Darwin, I definitely have him as still one of the top candidates that applied. His work experience, the way he's worked with us, what he's been able to accomplish in a short time, I think shows his value. It's drastic change. We've got to change the ordinance, and that's just to allow us to negotiate. Is that the only reason he dropped out? Is there other reasons? He has told us about his personal life where he has moved recently, and would he be willing to relocate for this job? So I think there's a number of hurdles to attract him to come here. And I also think we have 3 other qualified candidates who might want to have a conversation with or about today, and then decide whether or not we want to come with Darwin. I guess if I knew exactly what he was asking for, it might be easier to have this conversation. But if it's just if we change the ordinance, maybe we can attract them. then I think kind of eliminates him as a candidate.
I know that, I don't want to compromise for our residents. I want what's best for our village, and I think that the interim administrator has set that bar very high with the things that have been done. As we all are very well aware of how things have been going from our meetings, et cetera. I don't need to go into the plethora of things that have happened, that have been improved from all of the ways that since the interim has been here. I know there's been a wonderful thing that as a board, we've been able to talk. Hey, we come in, at least we say hi to each other now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
We didn't do that before. 6 months ago, we weren't saying hi.
That's true.
seeing lots of different things.
So I have to give credit where that credit is, and the bar is high. But I do agree with you, James, as well, that we have 3 wonderful candidates. Don't get me wrong there. All 3 have wonderful qualifications. But again, he has experience and he has knowledge, and we've been where somebody did not have experience or knowledge. The interim administrator has had several jobs. All I can do is allude that, bring it to myself as well. When I worked at one building for 10 years, that's all I knew. I moved to another job, another building for 10 years, I learned about that job. And now I'm at another building for the next 10 years, I've learned about that job. And I think when transitions happen, I think that makes you a better person. And I think that can make you have a different understanding, and you've been places that you can address to those different changes in things. So that's all I'm gonna say about Darwin, and I would be glad to talk about the other candidates.
Do you have anything to add, or Mike, or not?
Like I mentioned at one of the previous meetings, that's my concern is, do we want to repeat what we had in the past with the learning curve? And I'm not sure that this council or the village is in that position to wait that out. We're at a very critical period right now with a lot of important projects, a lot of things going on in the village, to where I want somebody that has their feet wet, that knows how to jump right in and do the job. And we're gonna go through these, again, these are great candidates, but my concern is they haven't been in that role. They haven't been in the role of a management position of leading a village, and what is gonna be the learning curve time in order for them to get comfortable, to get on board, and to continue with the day-to-day operations that we need to see done. And part of that, falls back to the Darwin thing. I see where he has a little bit of concern with maybe he sees overreach of council or micromanagement. I'm not sure if I agree with it or not. Maybe in some parts, yes. But we have to consider that whoever we put in that position is going to be the ultimate day-to-day operations of this village. And like Jerry said, we're not always here. We aren't always in the know. We're here to oversee. That's why there's 7 of us. It's a well-rounded group of, okay, let's get the best we're trying to accomplish. But he's or she is going to be the one person that's operating this village, and you need to give them the capabilities to do so. Do I want to be in this position in another year to where, we gave another candidate an opportunity to learn, to get comfortable, to learn the roles, to learn the management process? I certainly don't want to be in that predicament in another year. I think Darwin has done a great job. He's continued to surpass my expectations. I thought of him as a placeholder, when we first hired him, and he has definitely gone above and beyond that. Do I think we could come to a solution or to an agreement? There's going to have to be give and take on both ends, in Darwin's and council's. So I'm not sure, but as James alluded to, we could not come to an agreement, and then we're right back where we're at right now. And then we have the potential of scaring off 3 quality candidates as well. Taking a step back, with Frank's services, I thought we would have got at least 1 or 2 more village administrators
I agree.
that wanted to apply, and that was a little bit concerning for me to not see that. Why that is, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. You know, is it because of where we're at and where we were at as a council at a board level? You know, the disagreements and the animosity, that sort of thing. Is it the pay? Is it, you know, what is it? Because we should be a middle level. You know, we're not the smallest of towns to where it's going to be get your feet wet, start out your career, but we're also not a large city to where these people are going to finish out their career. But you know, our pay, it may be a little bit on the low end, but it's not. I don't think it's a huge factor. I think we're probably average for where our size of municipality is. I don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions for me, and my concern is, are we going to drop the process by not, you know, getting the cart before the horse, or not following the proper process? I guess, you know, we could be right back where we're sitting over the next 2 months if we make the wrong decision today.
It is a big decision. Yes.
Do you have any feelings about the proceedings, Jan?
Not at this point.
All right, thanks.
Let's keep in mind too that Darwin continues to be a resource for us. He can always consult for us. There's going to be a transition period. So he still will be somewhat involved in the near future, and if need be, we can always contract his services for whatever reason. When I went through the list of candidates, and I went through the qualifications that Frank had put together through speaking to all of us and other key members of the community, I think there's opportunity in these 3 candidates. I do. There's one in particular. I think there's a lot of added value that she could definitely bring if we decide to give her an opportunity. My only concern with her is how long do we retain her? Because again, I think her upside potential is quite high. Would be moving on to a bigger city sooner than later. But with that being said, I think maybe a 2-3 year project with her could do a lot for us. She could add a ton of value to our projects, to our ideas, to our goals. So I'm open to discussing these 3 candidates, what they can do for us, and what you know, hiring them looks like.
All right, then let's just proceed with that. We discuss Katie first. She interviewed first. That's how we're going to do it. I think she did real well. However, she is definitely a less experienced as far as in the role that we're looking for. I mean, I'm sure that she will be a manager eventually, and she needs to get experience. But I just don't think that. I think we need somebody a little bit with more experience than she is, and that's my take on Katie. So, anyone else has anything to add?
So Katie was the one I was referring to with what I think is most upside potential. Again, added value above the salary we're looking at paying her. I think she really comes in as like a 6-figure type person. She is light on experience, but I think she's got enough life experience that makes up for that shortfall. When I look at inexperienced managers, it's often it's easy to identify because their solutions are never counterintuitive. They never understand how to invest in people. They never understand how to develop the relationships. It's like a do as I say, not as I do type demand. I don't see that with her. I think she has the ability to create the relationships with our department heads, with our staff. She had a comprehensive plan for our financial position. She'd gone to her network and gotten good information. She reviewed our budget, our targets, had visited the village. She had definitely done her homework and was prepared to present herself in the best she could. I think she brings a lot. I really do. I think all three candidates do, but I think her upside is the highest compared to the other two.
I was just gonna say, I think Danielle would be my choice. We can't specifically say why, it's just a feeling with the three different ones. Like we've said, all of them are qualified. All of them bring something good and something different to the table. Just a feeling that Danielle would fit in and work well with everybody.
That's what I was also looking at, was Danielle. I mean, she would be my choice. She took the initiative to come to Blissfield early to meet staff, to go to different parts of the village. Even though the other two didn't do that same thing, they still had the chance to do that. So what it showed me is that she has a lot of initiative, in my opinion. And she did, in her current position, she works with, a lot of the village operations that you would have to use.
No, she certainly, she and Catherine, Danielle and Catherine were the two finalists from the three that I was going back and forth with from the open interviews. I think Danielle's a great pick. I think she'd be a long-term candidate. She's obviously shown she can manage staff. She's shown she understands municipalities. Maybe not at the highest level of the administrator, but she can obviously get there. Infrastructure, roads, water, she knows it, she gets it. And again, very relatable, very approachable, would invest in the community, mother of three. So you know that what's going to be important is schools, safety, and sidewalks, and parks and stuff. Like she checks all those hometown Blissfield qualities. So she's obviously a great candidate. I'd be super happy to extend her an offer. I wonder about the transition, her being out in Montana or Wyoming, what that looks like. But it does sound like she's gung ho to get back here. So I think she would make that happen. Yeah, she checked a lot of boxes for me as well. She really did. She's a strong woman. I think very level-headed. I think she'd be very smooth in the transition. Not looking to make waves, just come in and continue steering ship in the direction that council provides her. So I think she's an excellent candidate.
I'm on the same route that you are, James. Two women is the route that I was going with as well. And I think both candidates certainly have their qualifications. They certainly do. Danielle seems to me like a very slow, steady person. She's just got a nice wavelength about her, a nice calming effect. Lisa, I understood that from her time here that you guys felt. I know that, you know, we had the opportunity to meet with her and felt that she was nice, steady, and just, yeah, a good person, for lack of better words.
Yes,
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. Yeah, and I know that Katie did have some opportunities, because Katie did talk with, some of our folks in the office as well, is my understanding. So she didn't maybe come in as Danielle did, but Katie still had the opportunity
she
to
did, she
talk.
spoke with quite a few of us.
And how, what was your, I mean, overall impression with that as well as?
Yeah, I mean, she's very knowledgeable, yes, definitely, you know, and I think she had a report for you guys and stuff like that.
Yes, she did, right, yeah.
Yeah, and she saw information from us.
Yes, yeah, so I want just to clarify that about
Yeah,
this, so both women
Yeah,
went above and beyond on that part as well. And not that the other gentleman didn't, he came in that one day on Memorial Day, I know, but it felt that both girls, women, excuse me, are.
Yeah, not to take anything away from Jason Smith,
no.
I just thought the other two separated themselves from the pack
Yes.
during both interviews. They just really brought something more, something kind of intangible to the process. Whatever it was, motherly quality or young and vibrant, they brought different things, but they brought additional qualities that I think would work well in this community.
And Jason, thank you, you did help me with Jan's computer, thank you. He was the one that sent me and said, hey, try this, so I did, so thank you.
Yeah, and I guess since we're going down the line here, Danielle was also my top pick. I like the fact that she's got a lot of infrastructure experience, which I think we're gonna need over the next few years. And I also was impressed that she's got a finance background too, so she's got that money angle and budgeting and that kind of stuff down. What sealed the deal for me the other day was having them all here. That really helped me a lot. And then I made phone calls to department heads following the interviews that night. So 3 of the department heads that I talked to all felt Danielle, that they would really be able to work with her out of the people that they met, so.
And that's hugely important, right? Like,
I think it is, because
Yeah.
like I said the other night, we're not here every day.
Right.
The department heads, the employees are the ones here every day. They have to be, management's gotta be comfortable with them. They have to be comfortable with management to make things work. And so that was the consensus that I got through those phone calls and everything.
that's good to hear.
yeah, really good to hear. Good thinking.
I think all 3 had pros and cons, obviously, you know, some were stronger in areas, different areas. So yeah, having them all here, I got a different taste, different sense of who they were, and that was great, I agree. Would I be comfortable with any of them? Yes. Again, my biggest concern though is the learning curve and being able to do the day-to-day operations. And you know, jump and get their feet wet. I don't want to be back in this position, you know, in another year, and whatever it is we do, if we take one of these 3 candidates, it's gonna be up to us as a board to say, okay, we need to get more involved, we need to be, whether we have subcommittees or whatever, because it's gonna fall back more on us, it's gonna be a learning curve for this new person. And we need to help this person succeed, so that we need to train them as well as we can, give them the tools that they need, you know, the conferences, the trainings, whatever. If we go with a new candidate, Darwin is still my top pick, just continuing what he's been doing. You know, we're trying to get through this wastewater treatment plant project, we're trying to get through a financial crisis, a budget crisis. We're trying to just get through the day-to-day operations. That's something that Darwin has down. He has the connections with the department heads and employees. You know, with these candidates, we're gonna have to start that over.
He's got the communication with Eagle.
Absolutely.
He's been mending those fences that were burned. He's making communications with Riga, mending fences that were burned.
And again, it's what's best, what's in the best interest of the village, and absolutely, I think continuing par for the course would be But if we can't guarantee an agreement, then that may be a moot point. So, you know, it's a tough decision for me. I want to be able to move forward and, you know, again, in the best interest of the village, what's it gonna take, you know, to get our fiscal year 21-22 budget squared away, and get this water treatment plant, you know, finished up. As well as the other concerns of the village, you know, the water and sewer rates. This is gonna be a big job for this new person, and I hope they're ready.
That's why I wished he would have played the process out.
Stayed in a little longer.
That was a little disappointing.
So if we decide to move forward with one of these candidates, then the motion would be to move to appoint whoever as Blissfield Village Administrator, contingent on a successful background check and contract negotiations. That's what the motion would be. So we can think about that for a second.
I'm not ready to make any motion on that. So
Okay.
I would like to table that decision until after talking to Darla. That's just that's my.
I feel the same way. I wasn't sure how to go about it, but that makes sense to not make the decision on these three until we talk to Darwin. If we feel like Darwin is still number one, which in my mind he is. It's like Mike said, the others are all good, but Darwin is still, he has the background, he's been moving us forward.
As far as location, I don't know, I don't think any of our department heads live in Blissfield.
No, it's not that. I think
Oh.
at this point though, his commute is up close to 2 hours, I believe, or somewhere in that neighborhood, which is not, kind of doable on a daily basis.
Oh, yeah.
So
We're gonna have to discuss pay, you know, we did this as an interim thing, and we can only afford what we can afford, you know, can we afford him at a full-time scale? I'm not sure. Is he willing to move? Is he willing to relocate at least a little bit closer? You know, we talked to Ypsilanti, that kind of negates the community aspect that we were also pushing for, you know, how involved is going to be in the community, the after hours sort of thing, the being out there and being involved. You know, I still feel I wish we would have got different candidates that had the experience. That's my first and foremost, that's my number one issue right now. And, you know, I wish we could have.
Oh, go ahead, Frank.
Thank you. Appreciate all your discussion. You know, I just want to walk you through a couple of steps to make sure we don't end up with no candidates at the end of this conversation. Your wage scale is in the bottom. To the comments that were just made, they've been made twice about the level of candidates. Your salary level is in the bottom 15% of the state at 70 to 75. So there's 15% of the managers who are making less than that. And most of those are in the 60s. And if you recall, there were a couple of manager candidates who applied. But because I know of them, I helped steer you away from candidates that would not be a good fit there. I want to remind you that just in the past couple of years, you have a community development director, a DDA director, and one of the two out of the 30 or 40 that apply, one of the two interns that was chosen by our state association. They have to be very bright to get to that point with a year's internship. Alpena hired at over $110,000. They hired a DDA director. Duran just hired a landscape architect at $85,000. Douglas hired a DPW director at $90,000. Heartland Township, a DPW director at $95,000. Bridgeport, a planning and zoning administrator at 90. Marquette Township, an engineer at 90. Sutton's Bay, $90,000 salary, hired a planning and zoning director. This is not to have, Blissfield's a wonderful community. There's a lot to draw there. But to draw competent, good administrators to Blissfield, when you're where you're at salary wise, we're fortunate for the list that we have. For us to come up with village managers or village administrators to apply for this position, they have to be making 55,000 to 60,000 for a normal bump. Then they have to be in a population of under 1,000 or 1,500 to make it a logical step for them. And those candidates just aren't out there. And your candidates that you have for this position align with some of the much bigger communities I've seen and the positions that they've hired. You're aligned with them perfectly. I just, without getting into the way this process is played out, that's here nor there at this point. I just hope that at the end of this discussion, we still have candidates to choose from. I'm not sure where we're going to be at the end of this, but if it's to go back and talk to Mr. McClary, maybe we ought to, if that's what you want to do, maybe we ought to stop now and move forward in that direction. But I don't know if anyone's going to be, because these candidates have gone through a lot. They align, their skill sets align with all the searches in the state of Michigan in the last 2 or 3 years. So the skill set is there. Let's look at someone, for instance, Danielle seems to be a popular choice, promoted twice within her organization, started out at the bottom level of the organization, promoted twice, and has stayed there 8 years. We haven't talked about longevity in a job, but that's a really important quality. And she stayed there 8 years and she's got connections, born and raised in Lenawee County. I guess the council has to make a decision whether you want to go with who you have there. And if you go there, then you're going to have to change your ordinance and go in that direction. Or you're going to stick to go with your top choice of the candidates that you have. But further discuss, I'm just telling you because I've done this a lot and I don't want to harp on, I just think we ought to, the more we talk and the more we go on, we're going to end up with potentially no candidates. So that's where I see things at from my perspective.
Thanks, Frank.
Okay, Frank, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
Okay, so when you're rattling off, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but when you're rattling off all of these numbers and these people that have taken these positions, I think I know what your point is, but could you clarify, what is your point when you're saying that?
My point is when we talk about the level of candidates that you're able to attract in the positions that they held, their positions that they held when they took these jobs in much larger communities and much larger salaries, those positions, for instance, Alpena, they had a DDA director. You have a DDA director. Durand had a landscape architect. Douglas was a public works director. Heartland was a public works director. Bridgman planning. My point is that the positions that your people, the candidates that you have, align exactly with what those positions held before. So this thing about the learning curve, and there's so many communities that are hiring people that haven't been managers before and have been for the last 30 years and will continue to. Okay. I don't think.
Your point is more that they didn't have the quote administrator / manager experience, because when you're stating the numbers, that are $85,000, $90,000, we don't have that. So when you state the numbers, that was detracting for me, but I understand your point now.
Yeah, my point is that even at these my point is there's twofold or threefold, even at those salary points, and I understand that's not what Blissfield's going to pay, and I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that even at those levels, they attracted this type of candidates. You're at a lower salary and you still attracted those level of candidates.
Okay, I got that now. Thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
I have full confidence in making an offer to one of these candidates. I think both Danielle and Catherine just stood out during their interview process. I think, or Katie, I should say, again, has a lot of upside potential. I think at the salary range we offer, we'd be getting a bargain. I think she comes with a lot of energy. She's aware of the issues. She's already working on problem solving. She's already met with her mentors. She's got a network in place. She's familiar with the state. And again, I just see her she could be doing great things for us really quickly. Danielle, I think, is another obvious, she's a safe pick. Like Frank just alluded to, longevity. I think she'd be a long-term manager, administrator. Again, very solid life experience, very solid work experience. There was some drama in the office. I don't think she would put up with it for very long. She's the type of person that would deal with it. She was cool. I could see our residents really taking to her and being able to relate to her and work with her. She seems like a very qualified individual. And again, I thought Jason Smith was very qualified as well. I thought the other two just did something special to stand out. So I heard Danielle up and down the line. I'd be very happy with her. I still think Katie Beamer brings something that we can't quantify. I don't think it's a gamble on her. I just don't know what that upside looks like. It's hard to put it in numbers, but I think she could do great stuff for us. And I think she would stick around too for 3, 4, 5 years. If she got some projects completed and some projects started, I think that would entice her to stick around for a while.
Any other thoughts?
I like Darwin. I don't see us getting that negotiation done. Change the ordinance, salary, needs, he's got to relocate. I think there's too many hurdles, and I think he didn't do us a favor by applying, because he is such a strong candidate, and he's done so wonderful for us. I think we just have to remove him from the equation, and just know he's a resource for us in the transition and going forward. If we need him to consult on issues that he's worked on for us, we hire him back on an hourly basis and get his consulting. He can help us resolve what he's been working on and see those through, and then eventually he'll just be in the rearview mirror.
He would also be a good mentor for Danielle or Katie.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
So,
And I think he'd be a great facilitator on the transition as well.
yeah, he's discussed that with me. Whatever we need from him, right, however long we need, he's at, he's professional. He's gonna do whatever we want him to do.
So the kid with the energy and the big ideas, Katie Beamer or Danielle Gross, stay the course, slow and steady wins the race, very relatable, obviously would invest in the community. I think both would do wonderful for us.
What was it?
I've already said what I was going to, I'm not ready to make any motion or support a motion. But if somebody else is, by all means, it can be done.
What are the drawbacks from talking to Darwin again? Just have that conversation with him.
Well, the one drawback, as Frank mentioned, is possibly losing all three of our candidates. And then we start over. That's the big drawback.
Well, I don't know how much more we should be discussing. What I'm hearing Frank say is we need to stop our discussion if it's to not do that.
Not talked about,
Well,
stop now.
just,
Stop.
can we either make a motion or,
Stop discussion. Yeah. That's why I hear him saying.
Yeah.
What you hear. So somebody wants to make a motion, make a motion. If you don't want to make a motion, don't make a motion.
Are you gonna make a motion to stop discussion?
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
No, I think you can.
Okay.
I don't hear anyone making a motion on a candidate at this time. Is there someone who would like to make a motion on a candidate?
Sure, I'll make a point.
Here you go.
I move to appoint Danielle Gross as Blissfield Village Manager contingent on a successful background check and contractual negotiations.
I'll support that.
moved and supported to appoint Danielle Gross as Blissfield Administrator contingent on a successful background check and contract negotiations. I'm at administrator. Did I say manager?
No, Jerry said in his motion manager.
Let me, well, that's the way it was presented, so let me reframe it. I retract my motion. So I move to appoint Danielle Gross as Blissfield Village Administrator contingent on a successful background check and contractual negotiations.
Yeah, I'll support that.
Not to discussion, right? Not to,
No, we made the motion.
We can still discuss the
Yeah,
motion.
yeah.
not to rein in your motion or anything, but I think the motion should be to offer that position and with a salary. To offer potential candidate, whatever the position of village administrator. And then, depending on the successful background check as well as at a specific wage. Rather than a point, because we're not guaranteed that she would accept it.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, I think you went with that because that's what was written. Would
That's
you
what
agree?
was presented, yes.
Right, that's what was presented from Mr. From Frank.
So you're saying that we should talk money first?
My Dr. Frank's got his hand up.
Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, typically, that's held for a couple weeks until we get to the background check. And then we come back and there's negotiations between the candidate, if there's a successful vote. And it's a strong enough vote to actually bring her here from Wyoming. Then we would enter into contractual negotiations. Then the council would have plenty of input on the starting salary. The range is only $5,000 wide, but usually you don't do that until you get to the negotiation part. You don't do it at this point. But again, if that's what you want to do, you can move forward in that direction.
They have to know what they're gonna get to. They wouldn't agree with that.
Does that satisfy you, Mike, or not?
Yeah, that's what Frank recommends, that's fine.
Great. So moved and seconded. Are there any other discussion? That's how we can keep discussion going or not. If that's it, then you can call the roll, Lisa.
James,
Yes.
Gwen,
No,
Barb? No. Jerry,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Jan,
Yes,
Bob,
Yes. That motion carried. Did you get a hold of Danielle, friend?
Yeah, I'll be talking to all three candidates later today, and I will certainly let you know by this evening, what I hear back generally and see where she's at based on this discussion and the vote.
All right, and take a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Support.
You call the roll, Lisa.
Jan,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Barb. Yes. Gwen,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Bob.
Yes, meeting adjourned.
Now you're ready to take, oh, you said don't